We've just had a Forged in Aeternum that is a dev Q&A, and the questions are pretty damn nice. The answers, maybe less so. So let's jump in, we'll run through what they actually spoke about, and I'll get to the juicy bits right now. Before I do though, I just want to give a quick shout out to my Patreons. Much love to you guys, you make doing this a lot easier. And if you want to come and watch this kind of stuff live or watch me talk about it, then come and follow me over on Twitch. Let's get into it for real. So one of the questions was simply, why is season 4 content pretty much delayed and what's happening? And what they said is that they're going to slow down and concentrate a little bit more on quality. Now, does that mean that we'll actually see bigger gaps between the seasons? I'm not really sure about that. They didn't announce anything. But basically, in the expansion, there were some quality issues, mainly around the MSQ. But they want to take some time and make it a little bit better and a little bit better, like in terms of technical, as well as in terms of its features. And they specifically called out the group finder and having like an automated like pickup group kind of thing, which I think is generally good. It's just a little bit of a pain point straight after the expansion, but we'll see how this plays out when we get the roadmap. Now the next question was about loot biasing and how it's a little bit frustrating at sometimes, how there's like weapon perks that roll on the wrong things and all that kind of stuff. And they elaborated here something that I actually didn't know. Loot biasing does not apply to every item that you get. It's only a certain percentage. Most of them I think are loot biased, but there are some that are just random, which in theory is to help you get a different kind of build that you're not wearing. And they said that the weapon perks, they are actually still random. So you could get like a strength-based weapon perk, so let's say something like Insatiable Gravwell, but it could come on an item that has focus on it. And they say that that is actually intentional still, and the idea being here is that it keeps some named items being unique, or it allows crafting to sort of swoop in and be something specific. That, I think, actually sort of works, but it just feels a little bit weird. Sort of feel like they'd be better off without rolling the weapon perks, but maybe I'm wrong there. The next question I want to talk about is the balance changes. Basically, the question was, hey, you changed stuff too frequently and you changed it like too strongly, and we all had to change our builds, and it was very frustrating. And the answer is something that you might be happy with or might not be happy with. They said that they are actually happy with the frequency. They wanted to speed up, and so they have done. But actually, with some of the specific ones in the last couple of patches, they've gone a little bit like too far, too strong, if you will. And specifically, they call it shirking heals. They talk about the 10 seconds, and that might get walked back a little bit. That is something that they are looking at. If I'm honest, in the next Balance of Power video, I sort of suspect that they'll talk about it and maybe talk about exactly what they're going to change. And I sort of agree with this. If something is really, really strong, it should probably get dialed back a little bit. But if you are dialing like every 2 weeks so that we all have to change our gear, that can feel really bad. It can definitely hurt casuals who just about catch up. So they need to be a little bit careful with that. So we'll see how this goes in the future. I think they probably learned a lesson there, quite frankly, that it shouldn't have been done straight after the expansion. Could have probably just waited a little bit or been a little bit less like strong in terms of the changes. The next question was about the Dark Ascent. You might know that that is currently disabled from an exploit. The exploit was basically you could just trigger it multiple times without any cooldown, and they said that that's coming in the next minor patch. That, I believe, is actually tomorrow. Now, the next couple of questions are all about the economy. They start off with a question about prismatic mats and the value of them. Basically, aptitude has meant that the prismatic mats are very, very low. If you don't know what I mean, I'm talking about aptitude boxes because you get prismatics in them. And oftentimes, the value of the prismatic is less than the mats to craft the prismatic because of these aptitude boxes. It's a little bit weird like that. Basically, though, they say that they are happy with it right now. They're happy with the value of the prismatics. If I'm honest, not checked the price of them for a long time. But overall, they said they're happy. If they are going to touch it, they might look at aptitude boxes. But for now, no real plans. Now, there was one question that I sort of fundamentally disagree with, but I understand where they're coming from. And that was about the grind. Somebody said, where is the grind? They've pretty much done everything and there's nothing left for them to do. Why should they keep playing? And the answer was something that I agreed with. They've basically made the game a lot more casual friendly. Now, I think they've failed in one little area, which I'll address in a second, but in theory, making it so that people can get different builds and try a little bit more variety, I think it's a good thing, because overall, and this is a bit of a big statement that I'm not going to really expand on here, I do think that the progression in New World isn't that fun. However, it is relatively quick, and I think that sort of makes up for it. So I'm personally happy with that. They say they've catered towards the majority, And there's other things you could do like fishing, cooking, etc. They didn't say cooking, they actually said music. But there's other stuff you could do that's sort of like the side grinds. However, I do think we need more sort of like optional prestige grinds for the hardcore players, because right now, yeah, once you've got your good gear, you've done your M3 goals, you've got your PvP gear, you're doing your war, you can basically just war log or pick and choose which expedition you want to do. It would be nice to see them have a grind that's optional, that doesn't necessarily mean that every casual wants to do it. But I think the casuals, and the reason I'm sort of bundling these together, are getting a little bit hurt by the economy. And there was many questions talking about the economy, how nobody has any money, etc. We all know that the cost of the Azov inductors and the chromatic seals, they've basically taken a lot of gold out of the economy. Prices are falling, and it's really left casuals in a tough situation. I made a video about it the other day. I'm not going to go on like too much, but casuals are really struggling in this game. And actually, anybody other than just the very hardcore, I think are also struggling. Now, they say here that obviously we're going to have the Winter Convergence Festival where you are going to get free Azov inductors and chromatic seals. It's 1 per week for the Azov inductor and 1 per 3 days for the chromatic seal. And of course, you actually do need to do the event. It's not free. You actually need to put in some effort, but you know, it's not any gold. And they say that one of their goals was to make the ratio between rich and poor shrink. So the rich were very rich and the poor were like, I don't know, wherever the hell they were. Now, what I think has happened is actually the rich have been sort of just brought down. I don't think the poor have been brought up in any way. And actually the gold sinks for the poor, I think I mean it so they're not having fun. Now, it's a little bit crazy to talk about rich and poor in a video game. What we really need is we needed the very rich players to like come down. We also needed the poor people to go up a little bit. And I don't think they've achieved that. And I think there's a variety of different reasons. Basically, we're all broke boys who can't afford the cookies. I mean, some people aren't actually broke. You might have like 800,000 or whatever, but the majority of people are broke boys who can't afford no Pokemane's cookies. Now, personally, I don't think the war system is helping with this. There are a lot of territories not making that much gold, but if you are on some of the servers where you have multiple territories, you have like Everfall, Windswood, Eden Grove, Brimstone, or anything, any combination of those, you could be making several million a week still. So let's say they were making 1 million a week. Let's say you only divide that between 50 of you. That's still 20,000 gold per week. That's 4 chromatic seals, which a lot of people don't have. The value of that gold, even though it's way less, is now way higher because more people don't have gold. So I think they should possibly look there still, because that is basically taxing everybody and giving it to the 1%, but okay. Overall, when it comes to gold, I think whilst broke casuals are knackered, the main key thing is that they're not having fun either with that system. And just quickly, when it comes to PvP territories, they're going to be changing it so that there's 4 PvP influence races in a night. There's going to be 2 hours and it's going to be 2 influence races at the same time. I think that will sort of help a little bit because it'll be harder to contest multiple zones. However, I still think they should just put a cap on this at this point. It's going to be impossible to stop warlogging. The system, like the territory system overall, I think just needs a complete overhaul. So we'll see if that ever happens. This issue for me is like 2 years old and they've not really made any progress. Now, there was a question also about Magnify, and the answer here is a little bit sad because they sort of like it. They say that for like 1 or 2 builds, it might make sense. And if you don't have too much Magnify, it's quite easily workable. And they're not wrong there. If you only have 1 or 2 pieces of Magnify, it's not really an issue. But if you have certain pieces, I think I had 3 bits of Magnify. There was some combination of stats I literally technically just could not hit. No matter what I would do, Magnify would screw me over. And it's like good conceptually, but I think it needs a change. They're not making any immediate changes, but in the long run, they need to look at making this a bit more fun and a little bit more interesting. Right now, it's frustrating. The next question that I want to talk about is PvP gearing. Basically asking why is 700 gear score gated from PvPers? And yeah, it has been. The gear's just been pretty bad if you were just a pure PvPer, but they are buffing it and they have buffed it a little bit. So the PvP named items in the last patch, I think, were basically made so that you could upgrade them. They ditched all your old named items and they became useless, even though they've got like the same name. So your champion's ring that was old, you couldn't upgrade, but the new one you can. And I don't know what the hell the reason was, but obviously that must have been a technical restriction. Now you can upgrade everything, weapons, jewelry and armor. That is named, by the way, not the unnamed ones. You can already do that, even though they sort of suggested it was coming in season 4, but ignore that. And they do say there's going to be like better outpost rush boxes, which is true. And if you really want to like be prepping right now, don't open your OPI boxes. There's no point. They also mentioned about an issue that I used to have, but I've not had recently. And that is like when I sometimes start up the game, I would get like 2-3 FPS and I would never quite make it into the game. They say that's fixed and it'll either come in the next minor patch, which will be tomorrow, Tuesday, or it'll be in the next major one, which is basically December 12th, Season 4. There was a question about Adamant and talking about how they're going to make that more frequently available. Well, we already know about this because it was on the PTR patch notes. That's going to be in the chests. That's going to drop in price. I mean, it already has dropped in price because of that news. There was a question about the Glacial Tarn and are they going to be adding more mobs into it? And the answer is yes. Basically, the Glacial Tarn, there was large parts of it where it was just pretty empty and it felt a little bit weird. Now, I don't really care about that. I'm more interested in like the bosses and just sort of getting through it. Don't really see why we want trash mobs, but some people did and they're adding a few. I think they're adding 2 more packs. Fair enough, fine. The next question was about banning exploiters and bug abusers and all that kind of stuff. And they said, yeah, we actually do ban exploiters. Of course, they're going to say that. And they also said that we do waves of banning bots. To be fair, I very rarely see bots at this point. My main problem is actually seeing real people. Like, I can go to any Orichalcum node in the game and I'll see 3, 4, 5 people in a dense area just all trying to farm it, and it's a little bit sad. But bots, they are banning them, sure enough. Now, there was a agreement here that's something I've not heard them say before, and that is basically they are now aware of people maliciously mass reporting people to get people banned. And they said, I think they're going to action on the people who are doing that, but don't quote me on that. But at least they're aware of that happening. In the past, they've sort of been like, no, there's no automatic banning. It might be somebody who's overviewed it and decided that they should be banned. But, you know, we all know that if you get like 100 people to report the same person, they might get like a little bit of a temporary restriction. And that's a bit of an issue. And I would love to see where it's been proven or they find no evidence of why they were reported. I would like to see the people who reported them get a little bit of action on their account. I think if you all mass report somebody for no good reason, you should get like a 24-hour ban. Why not? Obviously, though, if there is a valid reason, then that becomes like all murky and stuff like that. But then it's not a problem because there was a valid reason. And that was pretty much it. There was one sort of statement that they made. It's like, if I don't see you until like after the holiday season, have a good time. And I was like, well, when is the holiday season? Is that Thanksgiving? Because this was recorded before Thanksgiving. So I think it's probably just Thanksgiving. But if it also meant Christmas, then it would mean that the roadmap isn't coming until January. But that's wild speculation. I think they just meant Thanksgiving, but I just thought I'd throw it in here because I don't understand Americans, I guess. Some interesting questions, but as I said at the start, the answers not quite as satisfactory as I'd like. I'd like more of a understanding that the poor, broke casuals need a bit of a boost right now. I think they're suffering the most. I'd like Magnify to change. I'd like those territory changes to happen. I'd like PvPers to have better gear because they're getting the shaft. Yeah, I think some of these issues are understandable. Let's just hope they can sort them quickly. And again, with the PvP changes and the balance changes, yeah, like adjust the frequency quickly, but don't tilt it all the way and break stuff. Shuriken Heels probably getting slightly unnerfed. So I hope you didn't salvage your Shuriken Heels gear. Other than that, I hope you have a most beautiful day. Big shout out to my Patreons. Again, you really help keep this thing going. And if you want to come and watch me talk about all this kind of stuff, there will be a link to Twitch in the description. Maybe on the street, on the screen. I can't remember if it's in the screen or it's in the description. Just come and have like great fun. We have just so much fun. So enjoyable times. You do not want to miss it. What you should definitely do though is like and subscribe. Goodbye.